entrepreneurship through various interventions. We have been at each juncture trying to address issues related to the new groups of entrepreneurs. The startup space is a very interesting space which is opening up in the country and also in the Northeast. And we felt that we need to be part of that space too. That's how NERES has emerged. And the idea of the NERES is to provide this platform to these new group of entrepreneurs to pitch their ideas and then take them through the commercial venture. As you're aware, again, that Northeast happens to be much more backward in terms of entrepreneurship and also backward in terms of the ecospace, the ecosystem which promotes entrepreneurship. We felt that we need to be involved in building up what I could call this funnel for these startup guys to get in. So this is how the idea germinated of NERES, whereby we eventually at the end of this journey of NERES, they will, 20 people will be offered 5 lakh rupees grant, which is a startup grant. And then we are thinking of taking them up again through another, what I call early startup grant, and then the seed fund. So that is the initial phase that what I is looking at, so that we continuously keep on building these entrepreneurs to, or push entrepreneurs through this funnel for the larger ecosystem. Today, I think I'm very happy that we have a galaxy of panelists who are here offering their advice, offering their suggestions, their perceptions on a very, very important theme. I think food and agri is going to be the next big thing for the country, particularly for the Northeast. And I think this is where, particularly in terms of marketing channels, in terms of supply chains, which has got disrupted like bad. And we hope that the entrepreneurs who are there, including, I think we have people who's from the FPO space, people who are promoting farmer producer companies. We have a person of eminence, Dr. Bhattacharya, who's been involved with Naramac as an ED, has fairly good understanding of the food sector. So we have a eminent group of people today, and I'm sure that this will be really useful and valuable to all of us. So without much ado, I would request the panelists to start the thing, and I would allow Sriparna to take over again. And thank you again for all of you for taking your time out and being here. Sriparna.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you so much. So in today's webinar, we have 5 speakers, plus we have Arindam Hazarika who will be moderating. And like most of the webinars that we've been doing, while we talk about challenges, we also try to focus more on opportunities, because here we have a lot of not only existing startups, aspiring startups who are also looking at opportunities, ideas on which they can ideate and come up with startups. So that is also one of we want to come up with some takeaways like that at the end. So I would just like, before handing over to Arindam, I just quickly introduce the speakers here. We have with us Dharam Chaturvedi, who is the National Head of Spencer's Retail. Dharam Chaturvedi, he has created, developed and established India's largest fish and meat retail business. Formerly, he was a category head at Carrefour. As a category head, he was a part of Carrefour's initial team to create and implement its strategies in India. A leading agribusiness, fishery, meat, poultry, frozen food supply chain and trade retail expert in India, he has led many functions in various organizations like Spencer's, Walmart, Carrefour, Reliance, etc. And he's actively involved in mentoring various startups in the agri-business space. So welcome, Mr. Dharam Chaturvedi to us, and we really look forward to your inputs for our startups of this region. Thank you. Then we have with us Mr. Amrit Deora, Director, Ashray Concept Foods. Amrit Deora is a founder of Ashray Concept Foods and a partner of AA Nutritions. He's into food and nutrition and processing business with products ranging from ready-to-eat noodles, snacks, and infant nutrition. So he is presently, one of his USP is getting into the baby nutrition line. And he's expanded his business beyond Northeast, and he's an exporter. So welcome, Mr. Amrit Deora, to this panel, and we really look forward to your inputs for this particular webinar. We have with us Mr. Jyotishman Das, who's the Director, KDG Foods Private Limited. Jyotishman is a corporate lawyer, and he's a corporate lawyer turned rice miller and animal feed manufacturer. Presently, he's the managing partner of Anahita Imprints and the director of KDG Foods Private Limited. After quitting his job in a top-tier law firm in Delhi, he started a flourishing venture in printing and rice processing business. Very interesting, and I'm sure with his corporate experience, he'll have a lot of value to add in this particular panel. So welcome, Mr. Jyotishman Das. I would next like to introduce Mr. Vijay Baira. Has he joined? Arindam, has he
Doesn't
joined?
look like. He was having some issues. I've just asked Harajyoti to try and help him.
Okay, maybe when he joins, you can introduce him.
Yeah.
We'd like to introduce Raj Borra, Director, RUT Trading and Manufacturing Private Limited. He's from Assam. He's the Managing Director of Idobari Tea Estate Private Limited, based in Jorhat. Now he's into specialty tea brand, which is called Rujani Tea. He's got a subsidiary in Melbourne, Australia, and sells and exports tea through its Indian and Australian e-commerce websites. Very interesting. And he has served 2 terms as the chairman of Assam Tea Planters Association. We really look forward, Mr. Raj Borra, to be amidst the panel. Then, of course, our moderator, Arindam Hazarika, who's been always actively involved with helping us to shape ideas that we have, and we just fall back on him, especially in the agri space, for actually connecting to helping us to all the speakers. Arindam, as you all know, is a banker turned agriculturist. He has spoken Aroha, premier food and livestock startup from the Northeast way back in 2013. He loves to paint, cook, explore the Northeast. He drives the liaison market linkage, agri and agri-science functions of Arohan Food. Welcome, Arindam. And with that, I hand over the entire moderation to you for this webinar. Look forward for a very engaging session. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Welcome, everyone. I think Vijay has also joined us.
Yeah,
so,
I just
if you're still there, you can just quickly introduce Vijay. He's joined us right in time.
So we also have Mr. Vijay Bairas, Managing Director of Center for Learning, Knowledge and Services. He's the chairman of Young India Worldview, partner of Eco Solutions Innovation. He won the Golden Sial India Food Innovation Award. Vijay is a zoologist, banker by experience, and entrepreneur by. So welcome to us. And with that, Arindam.
Thank you, ma'am. I request at least the panelists to unmute yourself so that we have some amount of ambient noise. Otherwise, it seems like you're only speaking to the laptop.
Great.
I agree, Arindam. Yes.
Yeah.
As NERIS is a sector agnostic, it's an all-encompassing program where we've tried to balance startups from every sector. This small group of people that we have today is also balanced in a way. It's a very balanced diet. We start with tea, but we have rice, we have meat, we have fish. We also have an evening snack which Amrit can provide. And then we have honey for your nighttime digestion activities. We'll start off with Mr. Barua. You represent a sector that Assam identifies with. You know, we have, by some estimates, 65 million people who are involved in the tea plantation and the tea labor community.
Yes.
Something which is intrinsically done by hand. In a world which is moving towards mechanization, which is moving towards automation, there is almost a sense of responsibility that you have towards your workers, that automation and mechanization cannot easily be brought into tea. And going ahead, when people would want something which is probably untouched by hand, which would need to have, let's say, a lot of automated processes brought into it, do you think the industry as a whole has, will change, especially keeping health and COVID in mind?
See, to answer your question, commodity teas that we make in India, the CTC teas, a lot of it has been automized now. The small batch teas that people make, the small tea growers, maybe a lot of hand production or use of hand is still prevalent. Can you hear me? Am I audible? Because
Yeah, yeah, you are.
I can hear echoes. Yeah. So to answer your question, yes, in the COVID world, you see, just to digress a little from your question, I love the theme that you have, reimagine the post-COVID world. Reimagining, how much of the imagination have we done, Arindam, as of now? It's only 4.5 months. Some countries, administrations have got some of that imagination better than some others. And without getting into the politics of it, I think that if on the 31st of December, China declared this, because I'm going to stick predominantly to COVID and the post-COVID world. I think that's the theme that you have, right? So there's no point going all over the place. So I will come back to your question. So, how much of imagination, reimagination, rethinking, re-engineering ourselves in this post-COVID world? Because I was reading, and we all have been reading different, articles, op-eds, where people have been talking about this reimagination, this invention of where we are going to go with this COVID world, and it's not going to go away, and we know it. IATA, the Air Travel Association, they feel that the 2019 figures are going to be met only in 2023. Can you imagine? So, including tea, you now, how do we reimagine the manufacturing of tea? Would be in the space of all agri products. We would have to build the confidence of our customers that we are COVID safe, and we have to imagine through this in many ways than how we have done what we have done in the last 4.5 months of entering this COVID era, or this new world as the big buzz is today. To come back to your point, a lot of our teas, a lot of the CTC tea is mechanized. We have a very, a large chunk of that is with only 4 or 5 very straight line manufacturer with 3, 4, 5 or max 10 workers in the factory. So and a lot of we are taking precautions about the hygiene factor, the issues of COVID safety. Have I been able to answer your question, or there's something that I've missed out?
Yes, I think when you started, you answered it, because sometimes we tend to imagine that people have learned how to live in the new world, but everyone's learning. So there might actually be an answer you might have 15 days later, which you think is better than what you know today. The second part of my question is, you sell across multiple channels, predominantly a lot of e-commerce.
Yes.
So if you would have to suggest to, the small, we have a lot of artisan tea and specialty tea that's coming out of Northeast.
Yes.
What channels should they look at? I mean, should they look at something like Spencer's or a Walmart, or is the e-commerce thing, there is still space in e-commerce for a small, artisan tea blender to get into? As a startup, if somebody is starting from zero, what does he look into?
Okay. E-commerce per se has been the choice for startups in the tea space. The great names are, of course, Teabox. I think most people in the startup world have heard of Teabox. They're drawing a lot of traction. They've been at it from around 2012. We've started, when I started my journey with a specialty tea, visiting the country where COVID started from China. And, I know that today the word China, or the country China, everything relates back to COVID. But when it comes to tea, then it's got a long history, more than 5,000 odd years of tea making and tea drinking. And really, the world of tea was discovered by me, at least in that country. And that was around that same year that Teabox started, 2012, when I started visiting and meeting a lot of people, exhibiting teas there. To answer your question, the small tea growers that we have in India are attempting to work through online presence. But even a tea box today, they started with physical stores, and most of these physical stores, unfortunately for them, I was just thinking of where they're going are in the airports. I know Kushal Duga well enough, and I think he's planning a third one. They have got one in Bangalore, one in Mumbai, and the third one coming up in Delhi. So for anyone starting on the tea space as a startup, tea is a very physical product. You need to go. You need to be at the face of your customer all the time. You have to be physical. We've tried to be online in a mature market like Australia. We find more traction because Australia, people have been not really attuned to tea, but they have been. It's a very mature specialty coffee market, and it draws a lot of parallel from coffee. And we could, in 1 year, draw a lot of attention as a startup brand, as a startup e-commerce brand in Melbourne.
Right. So it's
my partner there is doing a fantastic job.
In essence, like almost all agri produce in India, the consumer wants to touch and feel, be it fish, meat, rice, even to a certain extent, tea. People want to smell it. I'll come back to you again.
I would love to think that. I would love to think that. Yes.
Yes. Vijay is here with us from Shillong. Vijay, you're still on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Generally, what happens is farmers work on their field to 4 to 5, 6 months. And when it's time to harvest and collect, they look forward to that, little 10, 15 rupees per kg of product that they can sell. And due to COVID, even that's gone for a toss for the last 4 to 5 months. You are somebody who does both ends of the market. You work with the farmers at the villages, and you also export to countries like Germany and Singapore, some of the toughest countries to export to.
Yeah.
What would you say I'll put your question in two ways. What would you say is the single biggest thing that's helped you crack markets like Germany and Singapore? So if any young startup is targeting the top end of the international spectrum in agri, those are the countries. And how do you face the villagers if during COVID, for example, you're not able to pick or evacuate products which were scheduled to be evacuated in December, but if we understand that it's not possible to do that, then how do you face the villagers? So it's how do you reach the markets, and also how do you face villagers at the toughest of times?
I think to the first question of how do we reach out to various markets and how do we identify such things, I think as businesses we must identify what's the biggest strength. Some people, some startups come up with a basket of products which they're good at, which is good. What we did was actually we never thought about products. We always thought about service. The farmers were the one, after working with 30 odd farmers in 2015, is when we realized the strength of this particular product. And we started out with a product like honey. So we tried and tested honey nationally first in the country, in the localities, in the areas, local areas. And then I think in the first year itself, then we started reaching out to markets like Singapore and Germany. Singapore was the first country. It took us 8 months to get into it because, Singapore the norms are quite strict, right from your packaging to the way you label it and stuff like that. And then slowly we went down to the other countries. The point I'm trying to make here is that we knew what we had is just one single product. We didn't take a basket and say, what do you want? We had something and we found a way how to reach out to the markets, how to sell it, what makes those people or the market buy it or attractive towards them. So that's basically how we built it up, how we built certain products. And now we have a dashboard of about more than 36 products that we export to more than 16 countries in that way. Piggy riding and piggybacking on the honey that we have done.
So the confidence of the honey then translates into...
Absolutely. So identify just one product first or service, whatever it may be, which really is your strength, and see how markets react, because different markets react differently. You can't expect a Germany to react like in India or in India to react like a Middle East. It's different, the behavior. So you need to understand that first before you venture out with too many overheads and too many things which may kill the venture at all, right? And then secondly, I think post-COVID this year, during COVID, the first lockdown, the first lockdown, immediately 2 days after it was when we started getting phone calls, because you see March, April, May, these are the harvest season, the peak harvest season of so many agro producers. You talk about vegetables, you talk about fruits, even honey harvest has just been over, in that way. And the first thing that the farmer asks is, what do we do now? Where do we sell it? How do we do it? So there's a thing where we could say, we could have told them, we don't know, we're helpless now. Or there's another thing where, as entrepreneur, I think every entrepreneur has that in themselves, where you try to reimagine, which is a very apt topic that I must say that you chose for this, to reimagine how your business is. Our business is what? To evacuate farmers' produce, enable their linkages to different markets. So even in during such a lockdown, how do we do it? It's difficult when we talk about enabling technology for the farmers to do it, because the access is pretty bad. So for us, what we did was we created a very, very small. Now, when people ask, what does Coax do? We've launched a very small vertical called Coax Greens, where we evacuate vegetables. We've become a sabzi wala, and a fruit wala. But these fruits and sabzis that we are able to evacuate them on a daily basis, and they are able to reach out different households. But when we talk about, but this is the local market aspect, we are still, it's difficult for us to send their products, their orders that comes up from still, like Vietnam recently, they had ordered a couple of tons of spices from us that we have under our brand. And we are unable to do it in March. So they were asking us, what is the opportunity now that we can do? That door has closed for now, and we're still looking for an answer. I think right now, we have to look at, agriculture. I just feel that this has given agriculture an opportunity to all the farmers and to all the people who are in this particular sector, to disrupt it. This is the point that I feel that will break it, will make the sector, take the sector to its greatness, because we have to come up with something really disruptive in order so that our farmers survive, in order that the world still is fed. I hope I answered a bit of your...
Yes, I'll just have one tiny little additional question to it. Is that when you talk about disruption, we also need to disrupt how the way your consumer thinks. So
Absolutely.
after COVID, do you think Shillong is one of the most cosmopolitan markets in the country?
Yeah.
After COVID, do you think the consumers in Shillong are showing a bigger preference for local products? So
absolutely,
they want something with an imported label, or they want something which is from Mawsynram? What do they want?
Yeah. So I think recently even the government had launched something under MSME, where they said that there will not be any global competitive for your contracts worth 200 crores. So that itself is a step of something promoting local, right? So Shillong market and also the outside market. I mean, we are looking at a local, support local, grow local kind of a structure right now. Yeah, we're looking into that.
Okay, Jyotishma Anya is there. So every agri entrepreneurs, agri startups in the Northeast, we generally talk about small volumes. If somebody is able to do 5 tons a day, we are very happy. So Jyotishman's in the industry where he goes by 10 tons per hour, and even that's he's saying like half capacity. I need more stuff to process. So the question to Jyotishman is something different. He has enough capacity, he has the volume, he struggles on the manpower end. I mean, what I understand is there are, even with an automated industry like that, he still faces issues with manpower. So with a lot of the migrants that are coming back, does Jyotishman see that industry, especially in the agri space, you can accommodate a few of these migrants? We can probably make a joint, plan to engage at least 1,000 migrants in some of the organized large-scale agri processing industries in the state. Is it possible, Jyotishman?
Well, it's a very tricky question, because I cannot say for sure that yes, some things will change, or no, it won't change. I'll tell you why. A couple of years back, there was a similar situation in the country where people from Northeast came back to their hometowns, right? So that was sometime back, I think 16, 17 maybe. We thought that if people came back here, maybe we'll have more people to work with. But if you go to the rice fields today, you go to the plantations today, you don't have enough people working, local people working. All of them tend to go back to Bombay, Pune, Bangalore, Chennai. So that is something that has happened in the past. And I'm anticipating that the similar thing will happen again. And having said that, in our industry, we have, let's say, somebody who manages the office, a couple of people, accounts, sales, marketing. Then we have certain section of people who manage the equipments, the boiler room, the machinery. It is sad to say that we don't have many qualified people coming in, applying for a boiler mechanic, They don't have the requisite license, for example. You need a boiler license, for example. You don't have the people with the requisite know-how to run the machinery. Of course, that is because rice milling in such a scale or such exposure to such machineries have not been there in Assam. But going forward, hopefully it will be. But to have that, do we have the kind of people who are willing to take on the job? I don't think so.
Sure.
But let's hope this COVID is a new experience, and hopefully going forward, we'll have many more people who will be actually getting into this trade. This was specifically in relation to the rice mill, that is.
Yes, yes. Now, for everyone, is that we do discuss on the general line of questions that we'll ask to all the panelists, but there will be a couple of googlies in between. So the first googly is for Jyotishman.
Right.
Is that we understand you have issues with supply. Now, if we know the government sitting on a large amount of land bank, somebody
Right.
decides to give you 200 hectares tomorrow
Right.
and asks you, decide on a plantation, but you can't answer rice. What would be the
Okay.
first thing that you say you would plant?
I would say bamboo.
You'd say bamboo. Okay. So that's there. That's the
Easy,
first thing that
hardy.
comes to people's minds. For all
Yeah.
young people here.
No, and again, this 40 days gave me a lot of time to think about things which I would normally wouldn't do.
True.
So I happened to come across this organization called Mahasav. It is an Israeli organization working in agricultural outreach programs on a diplomatic level.
Okay.
So what they are doing in the entire country, they've set up center of excellences everywhere. And this is for the information of everyone. I'm sure most of you may know. It's interesting. They have center of excellences, and what they are doing is they're giving the technology that they have developed in Israel to countries like India. So with that, let's say mango in 1 acre, we had 40 plants. Now we have 936 plants that can be planted in 1 acre.
Okay.
So can you imagine the kind of output that we'll have?
We should have a different session on that alone, on the innovation.
No, absolutely. Then it got me thinking, why can't you have mango in Assam? I mean, I don't know. I've not gone to the soil testing part and all that, but maybe that is one way. Supari, I mean, so much of it is there, but we are unable to properly organize this entire trade.
Yes, arecanut together with pigs, I think the only two things that can compete with tea in terms of volume and people involved.
Yes, yes. So these are something that come to mind.
Now we'll come to the third bald panelist of the day. That's Amrit.
Lovely.
Generally, whenever a startup, be it big, small, wants to enter with a new product in a market, you do a small competitor analysis. So what Amrit, I mean, what I can understand from your business is the competition that you have are Nestle, Danone, Reckitt Benckiser, Abbott, Kraft, Heinz. So in a market that's dominated by all these guys, you decided that, nay, in Assam, I want to do baby food. So what made you first think that you'll do it? And second, what was the single biggest thing that made you successful?
Thanks, Arindam, for the question. That's a googly from the first question, yeah. So yeah, but success is subjective. I would not say whether I'm successful or not.
Okay.
But yeah, those big names are a big competitor. I happened to meet Mr. Suresh Narayan, CMD of Nestle, around 6 months back. He was in a function in Guwahati, and I asked him, "Sir, how do I compete with you?" When I met him, you know, I have a baby food, and his manager knew about my baby food, thankfully. So, he said, just concentrate on your location. You know, the only advice he gave me was just concentrate in your own geography, and that's what I've been trying to do, and that's what, and that's why it sells, because I have made it just Assam. My whole sales team is just concentrating on Assam. It's like, this is where we want to sell it. This is where we want to make it successful. And then probably we take it outside. You know, it has to be first, my own people has to respect the product I'm making and manufacturing and selling. So that has been one major factor from day one, is to develop something which is for the local community, which is to be liked by local community, and have a proof of concept from the local community, and then to make forward. And to all the startups, my suggestions would be the same. And even if I'm new products which I'm developing, so in any food business, we plan to launch at least 1 to 2 products every half yearly or every quarterly. So if there are 2 products in the shelf commercially available with us, there are 5 products which are always on R&D. And still now, the most of R&D what we are doing is completely on localized, focused on Northeast, as well as 2-3 states we are now catering to outside Northeast in my noodles business. So we are outside we are pan East India currently as far as noodles business is concerned. So the only way to keep the competition at bay is to be hyper local, which they are not.
I'll just add something to this. Northeast as a whole is around 35-40 million people. So if we were a country, we would be in top 50 of the world. So that itself is huge. So sometimes we need not also look all over the place. We have something locally. How much of your raw material is procured locally? So for your noodles business, for your baby food business. So for anybody who doesn't know, Amrit runs 2 brands called Assam Mix and Assam Bheem, right? That's your baby food lines, and you have your Golji's line of ready-to-eat snacks and noodles. So how much of the raw materials is local? I just want a short answer for this. What percentage would be local?
So if you consider raw material, probably nothing. Except rice currently, I don't see anything.
And the Bheem call, at least I would hope the Bheem call is local.
Yeah, of course. So that's the fruit part. Bheem call, it's been just 4 months we've started. So we are connecting to farmers and growing it. But if you talk about packing materials and everything, right now, a lot of industries have come up in Assam for packing materials. So I think 70% of our packing materials currently are being sourced locally only. So that's a good sign which is happening.
Coming to Dharamji.
Arindamji, yes.
Yes, I'll have a googly from you right from beginning.
Please.
So when we started, this is from my end, when we started our business, we sold across the Northeast, and the first time we went outside of Northeast, we encountered something called a modern trade. This is very important for all the startups who want to sell pan-India. You want to sell in the 30-odd states that we have. You have to deal with I don't know how to call this. It's like a David Goliath thing. You have to deal with a Goliath, which is called a modern trade. Now, the first time you enter a modern trade, they'll give you a list of charges, which goes like brand listing, space listing charges, SKU listing charges. And if you have a basket of 10 products, per modern trade, this comes to around 10 lakh rupees. Now, you are a veteran in the industry. How should people structure their basket of products so that you could enter at least into 2-3 chains and not spend a huge sum of money? Even 10-20 lakhs of listing fees is huge for a startup.
True. So I think I have taken down a few points. So I will explain on them later. But first, I would like to straight away answer to your question. That it is true that listing fees is huge for the national brands in the modern trade because their marketing budgets are huge. And to run a modern trade store, it is also quite expensive. And you would see that barring one company, that is DMart, most of the modern trade companies, physical modern trade companies, are still into losses.
Yeah.
And they are into huge debts. Spencer's, Big Bazaar, Reliance Retail, it is the largest, but still it has a huge debt from its parent.
Yeah.
So it is capex heavy and OPEX heavy. In India is the most expensive. India has the most expensive real estate in terms of retailing, and also the most expensive manpower cost in terms of retailing. It is in fact highest in the world. It is higher than UK, higher than Hong Kong, higher than China, higher than USA. These two costs together, the percentage of the sales. So therefore, so to just meet it, every year on year, the margins have to be improved, very simply thing. So people ask for charges. Sometimes, the category heads, they suggest, okay, we should charge this, but actually the requirement might be just 5 lakhs, but people are asking for 10 lakhs, right? So it is important. So I think that fees can be always avoided. So for that, I have certain solutions. First thing is that you should never compete in the Me Too products. The moment you are going to enter into a Me Too products, then these charges will arise that, okay, we have already these 3 brands doing this product. Why do you want to come? So just to create the entry barrier, these fees are charged. First point is this. Second point, the first point was already there, okay, to meet the expenses and those things. But it is also an entry barrier to stop Me Too products. So for companies of Northeast, there are various kind of agri products. It is rich in horticulture products actually. I think this is the only zone, I think around, you said 4 to 5 crore people are there, and huge geography. The population is very thin. So ample land is there to produce horticulture products. And value addition is now has started happening. So I think if the Northeast companies or small companies, if they want to get their entry into the modern trade, they should start with the niche products, not 10, 20 products, 4, 5 products, 2, 3 products. It might be like some of the panelists said that we should start small. Similarly, we should
small basket is the other challenge that startups have is visibility नहीं मिलती है उनको.
Visibility नहीं मिलती है, ये है.
लेकिन so small basket of 2 products, is it going to be viable for them?
Correct. ये बहुत ही smart सवाल है. इसमें it will be viable for them because first thing is that the entry point. How you integrate in the business term, यहाँ पे सब business चलाते हैं तो either you expand yourself vertically or horizontally. So in this you should put horizontal growth. 2, 3 products one should enter with, so that the listing fee sometime it can be waived off. आपके साथ में याद होगा that the entry fees to enter in Spencer's was in huge, but for you the entry fees was very small. Correct. So it was similarly. So if you are going with, since your product was niche and it was the first country, the person who was that enterprise was the completely integrated into it. So therefore you entered in pan India basis in such a short span of time. So it is the same suggestion that if we are into entering in a small way, then the listing fees will be less. There will not be a problem. And many companies, most of the modern trade, they would like to add the companies from Northeast into their suppliers portfolio. So one thing is,
sir, the next question following to that is, you've handled companies from across the world actually. So when you get products from startups or small companies or new companies, what is the usual complaints that you have? So this is for whoever wants to sell in the large stores, is to avoid these mistakes. So if you say avoid these 4 or 5 mistakes, what would you suggest कि नया company को नहीं करना चाहिए when they want to enter a national market?
Perfect. So इसके पहले जो मैं बात बोल रहा था कि there are opportunities that most of these companies, they would like to get associated with companies of Northeast. Primarily, it helps them show that they care the society, they care about the small world, they care about the startup ecosystem, they care about the green and all those things. So it helps them build a story in the eyes of their customers. First thing is that. So most of the companies, they want to be associated with Northeast. So this should be the strong point, that okay, we are from Northeast and we have this niche product, please help us launch. So most of the people, they will try to help. But the question what you have asked, this follow-up question, this is very, very important. The companies are not market ready. You touch upon with 10 companies, at least I think 1 or 2 will be ready to supply you. First and 4 important, I have taken down the list. The compliances, they might not be compliant. Compliant, basic thing, FSI will be there, but the products on which they want to do FSI, that product will not be in their list. Sometimes the GST address and the FSI address will be different, so they will not be listed. Most important thing is the labeling. FSI is very, very important, and the labeling is, of course, it is a very important part of that. And most of the modern trade, they are the most compliant companies in terms of labeling. And I have seen this, I might be wrong, but most of the companies, not only most, all the companies with whom I have dealt, I tried dealing with, their labels have been, their labels have been not right, because there are so many small things, and every 3 months FSI issues new guidelines on labeling. So people are not aware, and if they're aware, they take it very lightly. So sometimes products get launched and then they get off the shelf. On shelf आने में फिर time लगता है, a lot of energy. So labeling is very, very important thing. So compliances, labeling, packing, the quality of packing, बहुत important है.
Thank you, Dharamji.
इसके अलावा और भी पॉइंट्स है लेकिन ठीक है अभी हाँ
we'll come back again, sir.
हाँ
Subhash sir, are you there? Bhatta sir.
I'm available.
Yes. Bhatta sir, we'll take the liberty of including you with your 40 years of experience trying to sell produce from the Northeast. So I'll give you a very small question. Is that we keep on talking about the same basket of products, that ginger, jackfruit, turmeric. Now, if you want, because you're now working with CSIR also, in terms of value addition, if a startup wants to focus on just one thing, kya karna chahiye sir usko? Instead of going into multiple things, like Dharamji also said, if they want to focus on one thing, which thing that which is the commodity that you would say has not been exploited to its maximum potential? They can, jitna dur jana sakta hai, they can go furthest. In which commodity would you suggest?
Instantly, if you ask me, I'll suggest that, see, ginger and turmeric, these are the two things which basically we have not tried to make any value addition. We have just pushed the product from Northeast and somebody else are making money out of it.
We are feeding companies.
Yeah, we are feeding companies, we are feeding water and turmeric, right? So exactly what we should do is that we should go for primary processing of ginger. And after that, whatever the bigger size rhizomes are there, you go for direct marketing, and remaining you go for end product. See, keeping Southeast Asian market, I will suggest at this stage, why not we make ginger preserve and candy, which has got a very wide market in the Southeast Asia.
Right.
And as on date, COVID-19 post, I think probably this is a immune booster. It gives really a very good market. So starting point, if you ask me one, I should prefer point number one, ginger. Second, if you say turmeric now, last 1.5 months, even the children in the house also know about turmeric.
Yes.
Right. So, and we are the treasure of having both these commodities, ginger, turmeric, and whatnot, pineapple next, blah, blah, blah. So there are series of immune boosters with us in our pocket, and somebody else is making money out of it.
Understood, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You asked me one, so let's go for one first, ginger.
Otherwise, when you talk to startups, agri startups, they do the entire basket, and then there is no volume in any. You talked about immunity. I'll come back to Mr. Barua again.
Yeah, please.
Unmute. Yes.
Yes. We see a lot of focus on preventive healthcare, preventive wellness now. Yes. And tea is something which is a very good medium for preventive healthcare or immunity, because whoever has tea usually has it twice a day, every day. So yes. Do you think there is upcoming, because what we have in the Northeast, we have ingredients for immunity. We have your turmeric, we have your ginger, we have your basil.
Yes.
So do you think there is a potential for immunity teas, especially with Ayush Ministry also so bullish on the entire preventive health space? Yes. Is tea and immunity a good mix to be in?
Yes, of course. Tea itself, there are two papers that were released almost just after the COVID incidents took place. One was from a research institute in China, and then the Tea Board of Sri Lanka started to propagate in their own country and also abroad, because Sri Lankan brands are doing there's a brand called Dilmah that used to be the third biggest brand after Tetley and what is the other one? Tetley and the Hindustan Lever brand, Lipton. So all these brands, they have immunity as the forefront, even in the COVID era. We need to put forward a lot of the studies on the space where we can generate more interest. I know turmeric with tea, Ayurveda along with tea would do very well. We would definitely need to do more research in that, because you need to be very careful about the claims that you make. If you have a claim that is not well and scientifically it's not founded scientifically, then it can be contrary to what you are trying to attempt to do. So we need research in that. As far as tea goes, And what it does for the immunity boosting of as a COVID booster, there is enough research. And we are trying in India also. Toklai, the research institute in Jorhat, the Tea Board of India put up many of the well-being abilities of tea. We will need to carry forward this message to the larger audience of tea drinking, population in this country and the world at large.
Thank you. Coming back to Vijay, the panelists can remain unmuted. Unless you have a pet dog or parrot which is sitting next to you, you can remain without muting yourself.
Right.
So Vijay, we also understand you have a traceability program that you run.
Yes.
So we've done traceability in-house for a livestock program, but you run it for your honey and also for your vegetables, I understand. So
yes.
How did you set it up? Did you rely the algorithms in-house, or did you take up vendor from mainstream vendor? And how long did it take for you to set up this traceability platform?
Okay. The first and foremost has to go back to the story of why that we want to bring up traceability for our products, right? When traveling across the world, we often see our products, especially from Meghalaya or from the Northeast. Like we have the turmeric, which is wonderful. The teas that are one. At least the teas are very well known because it's pretty old industry, about 200 years old or 300 years old, but not for the other producers. So otherwise, you see a different packaging that says MDH, or a different another packaging that says Dabur. It started with honey, so the story was like that. So I came to find out from my farmers that there were buyers who would take it all the way to Siliguri, and then from there it reached down to Dabur, and but when you see the packaging, it's packaged in Pune or packaged in Maharashtra for that matter. So we wanted to address that matter. How do we make it, to bring the traceability part to our producers? And so discussing with the team, the first thing we did was no algorithm, nothing of that sort when we started it. So we did basically your QR code. So any of the producers that you buy, you buy a honey, a spices, a juices, whatever it may be, you scan the QR code, right? And you trace down, you can see the face of the farmer, the name, the address, the phone number. So it traces down to the producer. And there have been people who actually, buy it. So we had this Spanish couple who'd come down and a friend had gifted the honey. So what they did was they scanned it and they actually called this number to verify whether it was actually factual or whether we just claimed it as a marketing propaganda. So when they did and they met up, things like that. Now we want to work a few, and then so we did the same thing with vegetables. People were saying, you're buying vegetables from outside and doing this, but the whole point for us to do this, because it's not about the money at the end of the day. It's about the evacuation. We've built this relationship for 5 years with our farmers. We have 30,000 odd farmers working with us. And this is the key time for them, For us, living the city, it's easy. It's just one phone call away for a Swiggy or for your drugs or for anything for that matter. But for them, it's a different scenario altogether. They have the fruits and vegetables, but they don't have the dry rations, the medicines, or anything for that matter. So that's what we wanted to do with that. So we started to take pictures, in a very, very rudimentary way. Take pictures, put up the addresses with the producers, and to say that they belong to this block, this village. That's what they do. Their income is that. So that traceability actually helped us to bring to build a database. So now we have farmers in Uttarakhand, we have farmers in Kashmir, we have farmers in Assam, all across the northeastern states. Similarly, on a similar model. When the number grows,
like Dharamji said, that you need to be able to back up every claim that you make.
Exactly.
If you're able to back up, then the scale is evident for people to see in what you've done.
Absolutely.
We also don't have a lot of time, so I'll move on quickly to the other two panelists. Jyotishman, one more question for you.
Yeah, sure.
Is that this is a two-part question. One is if we understand your brand now sells within the Northeast, right? So your rice brand, which is called Majasa, sells extensively in Northeast.
Right.
If someday you'd want to brand a rice which is endemic to Assam and send it to rest of India, which are the two or three things that you would focus on creating that brand? And secondly is for people who want to think big, who want to think about 20 tons, 30 tons a day.
Right.
Apart from the bank balance, what else needs to change in their mind so that they go beyond of thinking from 50 kgs a day to 5 tons an hour? So one is your branding, and secondly, what needs to change in their minds?
Well, regarding the first part itself, we in Assam and Northeast, at least in Assam, we have, let's say, not just we have different kinds of paddy. Like let's say we have Baudhan, we have Kumodhan, we have Joha varieties, and we have certain other varieties of paddy. Now, what we are doing, we are homogenizing all the local hybrid varieties and just parboiling it. So this is because our entire business ecosystem is all about mass and volume. If I were to ever do that, and this is such an aspirational thing for me, I do want to do it. Like my friends who come from basmati chawal eating friends from Delhi, they come down, they like Joha, they like Tulokhi Joha, they like Kunkuni Joha. But I don't have the scale, or I don't have that much of paddy to pack and send it elsewhere. For example, somebody asked us for 400 tons of black rice from France. I didn't know where to go, whom to ask. Shri Upendra Rabaji of, I think, Gwalpada, he's doing a tremendous job. I think single-handedly he has brought the black rice vocabulary into use. I mean, people now know him as the black rice fellow. There's another person, Mohan Bora from Jorhat. He set up entire seed libraries to preserve the germplasm of the traditional varieties of paddy. He has around 250 traditional varieties of paddy. I mean, there are some which can last the entire season in flood. There are some which can resist drought, so on and so forth. And anybody, if somebody is interested in getting paddy, he's giving out for free with the only stipulation that you grow it and you give back some to the
replenish the stock.
Replenish the stock, and also you give it to somebody else to grow. So these are the kind of mindset we need to have, and so that we have 400 tons of black rice to be sold in France. And that is the time when we will think about it. Right now, I want to, it is aspirational for me, but right now I cannot. I have Ranjit, which grows 25 man in 1 bigha. In 3 months, it is ready for cropping. So I cannot think of anything else.
Understood.
And with regards to going beyond this, beyond 10 tons that we are doing right now to 30 tons, 40 tons, the demand is there. The cultivation is there. It is just that with regards to cultivation, so we do mostly salidhan out here, that is kharif crop. We need to do the rabi crop also, because half the times you grow across the paddy fields of Assam, you won't see more than one time cropping.
Yeah,
whereas in Bihar,
half
Bengal,
the season is for your cattle. It's picnic time for your cattle.
Yes, yes. And then if you go to Bihar, Bengal, there'll be 2 times paddy and 1 time potato, vegetables, whatever. Why can't we? I mean, if we are talking about doubling the farm economy, I mean, only thing that you have to do is incentivize people to get them to do 2 cropping. That is
now with millers like you in play, I mean, you can actually do, guarantee MSP, which the government cannot probably. If you put out a sort of quality and MSP guidelines, can it be done?
Yes, it can be done. In fact, I would like to share a little idea of mine. It's still in the idea stage. That going ahead, I would like to have a cooperative of some sort, wherein I have all the transplanters, threshers, harvesters, mind you, not the local ones, the proper ones which give proper good output, and get them employed in the local farms and get them to change, because right now what happens, people don't have the irrigation facility, or at least the ecosystem to help them grow 2 times. So if I can achieve that, I can help the local villages access to such facilities, such technology. I think that change can be brought about. And going ahead, I think it is doable, but we need people who are able to think on those lines and actually get it done on the road. Right.
Moving quickly to Amrit. So Amrit, as part of Finer and also as part of your own business, you come across sales channels across the Northeast. And like you said, one of your strengths was also focusing on the area. Now, we also understand, I mean, business families in the Northeast traditionally come from a few, lineages, and the Assamese, for lack of a better term, the Assamese population in general was not very business savvy. Now, do you think that's changing? Do you actually need to come from a business background or to understand, Dhanda for that matter, or the channels and the sales channels, the distribution channels are friendly enough that somebody with no business experience can also survive?
Very good question. I really not now looking at being associated with multiple associations. I really see with people like you in business now, I think ASME's community for that matter is growing leaps and bounds as far as business is concerned. And the good part is that they are into focused business, not here, there, or, moving around, trying to actually utilize the resources available in the state. So that is one good part with businesses. Be it in Finer also, we've good representation of ASME's business houses there as well, be it in food processing committee or power or anything, or tea or whatever, other sectors as well. Now, coming to the marketing channels, I think, see, export, there are a lot of things, nothing against exporters. I've been exporting and it was a dream for me to export. I think export till it is a dream is good, because when you really enter it, you realize that it really doesn't make you that kind of money. And it's not sustainable still for us. I've been trying at various forums with APIDA also that, it is really not sustainable with exports. So when we are high? Sorry, the logistics cost is very high. The logistics cost is very high in export, I must say. Even the fruits and vegetables, the logistics part is what, though we have a cargo center, still the logistics is what is holding us from exporting. So my point is, when I'm exporting my product, I'm in this cheap retail outlet or a modern trade outlet in Dubai or in Qatar, rather than I have a potential to be in the shelf of Spencer and Food Hall. Rather than going cheap export, I'll do an expensive Indian supermarket chain and still build a brand, because we're the 1.3 billion people to feed now with Bombay, with Chennai being all closed. People are looking east to give them the food. We've been getting inquiries from all over the country to sell noodles. So this is actually the time where we all should get up and target whichever marketing channels. Mr. Dharam is here. Grofers had started Guwahati. They, I think, probably they are not operating now because of logistics issue. They were operating out of their Calcutta fulfillment center. So they would come in. Swiggy started doing home delivery. So there's no lack of marketing channels right now. All the departmental stores has been supportive. Even we get orders of 4 or 5 packets from departmental stores. So any local product is being given preference. Locals are being given preference. And be it online, amazing online inquiries we are getting. The only challenge is that anything of lower MRP than 500 doesn't sell online. It doesn't, because Amazon and Flipkart or Snapdeal take away all your margins. So if I'm selling a 220, I'll just like to share the figure here, a 225 MRP packet of my baby food. When negotiated with one of these guys, I would not name, my realization was just 68 rupees. I was like, no, that's not going to work. That's not even my costing. So yeah, so anything above 500, if you're targeting, I think online is a good channel to sell. And with local distribution, you can sell at any price points. Yeah.
One thing for all the young startups here is, if you look, Amrish got a very simple website, but what I like there is that there is a nutritional comparison between his product and what a Cerelac and a Nestum gives you. And you'd be surprised to see that he beats them in many of the categories. Yeah. A few of them they're at par, and obviously it's a large list, so a few of them he's below. But on average, he matches Cerelac and Nestum across the categories. A very simple website, but something when you're competing with big brands, I think that kind of information helps a lot.
And I think just add here that I was actually thinking of startups or questions you had put in. I think we have a very big scope in nutraceuticals sitting in Northeast. We have a huge scope in nutraceutical or Ayurvedic for that matter. Either you can manufacture it here, you can get it third-party manufactured. If somebody needs a blending facility, a packing facility, so those small packing facilities are available in Northeast right now. So the other day I saw a product which was actually manufactured in Bombay, but it was marketed by a Guwahati company. It was a nutraceutical product. So startups who have probably used this time to skill up on your nutrition, because food is the only medicine right now. Right now I'm identifying a food by not its name, but how much of calorie or protein it has. Because no doctor is going to save me. It's only the immunity I built through my food which is going to save me. And that is what is going to be the new normal. So, any startups or young guys here, do an online nutrition course. My only suggestion to the young people here.
That's very, very important.
Perfect.
And that leads very nicely to Dharamji, is that you handle customers. I mean, collectively, your stores would handle millions of customers a day. We all talk from the Northeast about organic, about, you know, single origin, no pesticides, no herbicides, stuff like that. But from the mainstream, you know, the Hema, Pushpa kind of housewives who come into the stores, do they actually want something which is organic, something which is free trade, something which is sustainably grown? Has the mainstream Indian customer come to that level of maturity or even, you know, affordability where you can actually give them something with all these added benefits of being free trade, being sustainably grown, carbon neutral, stuff like that? Or do you see the demand coming for it in the next 4 to 5 years?
In a single word, yes. And in 2 words, very high. There is very high demand and very high understanding among the customers. It is not only the premium customers, it is also to the normal standard customers. People are now, they might not understand something which is organic, which is sustainable, but they know Desi. So 3 kinds of customers are there. One, they want organic, one, they want sustainable. Sustainables are very few. They have to understand what is sustainability. But sustainable, organic, and Deshi, it is in vogue. And there is so much demand that now customers are not trusting you. They are not trusting you, means they are not trusting the retailers. They are not trusting the manufacturers. Because in India, so much of population, so much of demand of organic products, it is not being met, in fact. So normal products are being packaged into those organic labels and they are supplied. So customers really want the certification. It is very important.
And do you think they're willing to pay little bit more? They're willing to pay 5-10% more for such labels?
Absolutely. We have done a survey. Earlier it was 30%, but now they are willing to pay in the range of 15 to 20% higher than the normal products.
Okay, that's good enough.
So I think it is fair. So a few more thoughts, if we have time, some 2-3 more minutes, I would like to talk. So 3 parts I would like to talk. So first part, it is the building supply chain in Northeast. It is very, very important. Since the population load is less on the land because area is more, about 50 million people are there. So in the previous session, someone told that the work culture of that geography is to be improved. I think the work culture is really good in Northeast. People are in Northeast, they go out, they go in rest of the country and they do so well. They are now so skilled and they are going back to their roots. Some of the people, I think 1/3 of the people might stay back to their roots and they will contribute to the economy. So how to utilize them? So I think most of the people are quite aware about this. So one thing is that how to utilize them. Secondly, okay, there are small, I had told and Mr. Ramritji told, Rajji told, Judishmanji told that, okay, niche products should be supplied to the channels, the modern trade. So for niche products, we should have the niche products available in bulk also. And same was your question that, okay, niche product होगा तो उसका वॉल्यूम इतना कम होगा कि खर्चा बढ़ जाएगा. तो उसका कैसे वॉल्यूम बढ़ाया? तो I think very simple way we have to do. It is very quick to start this this FPO and FPC. So in FPCs there are 2 kinds. The principle of FPCs are 2. Either the community based or the product based. Means either commodity based or the community based. So we should focus on the commodity based, not on the community based. If it is the commodity based, single product based, then it will be scaling up. Like so many of dairy companies, chicken companies, right? So अगर 1-2 product को लेके अगर आप बनाएंगे FPO, you will be hugely successful. So much of grants government is giving to FPO, so much of support is there, and many retailers, and not only retailers, many sales channels, they want to tie up with the FPOs because FPO is commerce. So on supply side, we should do that. We should focus on the niche products and we should scale that item. We should make it big, like turmeric, pineapple, and ginger. This is already big. So in that validation is needed. Kiwi is very good product. Kiwi वहाँ का kiwi है, इंडिया में मार्केट नहीं हो पाता है, बाहर का kiwi इंडिया में बिकता है. तो ये सब कुछ समस्याएं हैं. एक तो हो गया हम निश प्रोडक्ट को स्टार्ट करके हाउ टू स्केल अप. सेकंड, अभी आप देखेंगे पोस्ट कोविड अभी 3 सेल्स चैनल जो इंडिया में होते हैं या किसी भी डोमेस्टिक में, इट इज द होरेका, इट इज द रिटेलर एंड इट इज द ONI. तो होरेका हैज been beaten badly. The premium hotels might not be into their full capacity in next 3 to 4 years also. Restaurant and caterers will be, but it will also take some time. So Horeca segment is gone almost in the next 1-2 years. Office and students, they will be less than 50% of the capacity. So the only one major segment, the customer segment, will remain for the next 2-3 years and will be very strong. That is the reseller segment, the retailers. So the retailer segment has various things like distributors, super stockists, and all those things. So those supply chain, those things will be in vogue, right? So that channel will be important. So instead of focusing on Horeca deals, we have to tie up with the resellers. Maybe it is online or offline. Also, direct to customers, it is happening through this Swiggy and Zomato and some other this delivery channel partners. So direct to consumer, it is really, really important in the products which are slightly premium, so that the cost of logistics can be taken, like specialty tea, specialty honey, and so many other things are there in Northeast. So it is not tough to reach to customers of Northeast because products of Northeast are well respected and well accepted. This I'm reiterating multiple times. So there is no dearth of demand. Only thing is that there should be someone capable or a few capable companies who can handle all those nuances and they can push the products into the supply chain. There is already a natural pull for these kind of products. So, yeah.
Any of the panelists want to add any closing remarks? We thank you all. We can make it open for the the audience. If anybody has any questions, how do you do it, ma'am? Because we are already beyond time, but I think if anybody has any questions, should we make it open?
Yeah. We can take it like this. There must be, I think there's already some questions come in, Arinda.
Yeah.
So there is Areca nut tea. There is Marmara is asking, I think Mr. Borua can answer this. Is there a potential for Areca nut tea? Does that combination work?
Areca nut tea?
Yeah. People are going out of the box.
Yes, that's really out of the box. I haven't heard of an Areca nut tea, but going forward, the Indian population, tea drinking population, is going to be very focused on different types of tea. There are brands in Guwahati which are doing Bhut Jolokia tea, mixtures with Ayurvedic products, because I really like to think of the opportunities that post-COVID will present to the startups. If there was a startup today which wants to come in and do a tea which already has the benefits of immunity boosting, mark it up with different Ayurvedic products, a different type of tea also. If you go through the research of research studies in Toklai, there is more than enough that one can take those claims across to the customers, to the tea drinkers. So not only a specific tea with Areca nut, you can think of many other teas, and the basket is wide open, really, Arindam. Tea, 97% of adult Indians drink tea. You can only just create another the startups, and there's so many startups that keep coming up every almost month, literally, with e-platforms, startups with different brands on the physical side. Tea is really the buzz, and it's very nice to see that youngsters, especially in Assam, are getting more and more encouraged to start up tea ventures. I wish them all the luck, really.
I think with the government planning to ban spitting, Areca nut tea becomes very important, because you have your Tamil and you don't actually have your Tamil. You can follow it. There is a question, any large cardamom value addition and its scope in Northeast? I think Subhash Bhattacharyji sir is the best equipped to answer this. If you can shortly, sir, help Mr. Pradeepan Rai. Large cardamom value addition and scope in Northeast, sir.
Hello.
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, large cardamom from Sikkim. The auction is being done to get a better price for the farmers, number one. And drying part is done to get a good market at this stage. Even Arunachal Pradesh Spices Board is setting up a facility in for doing complete auction of large cardamom from Arunachal and Nagaland. This is what at the present what is happening.
Sir, is it possible that we share your number so that they can get in touch with you and if required in future?
Sure, absolutely, no problem.
So we'll put it up on the Facebook where the event is streaming live. We'll put it
you
up
can
on
give
Facebook.
my mail ID also.
I'll give you a mail ID, sir. Yes.
Should I put here?
Yes, sir. You can type it for everyone. They can get it. What is the scope of hydroponics in India? Mr. Mrinmoy Kaushik is asking. I'm not an expert in hydroponics. We've done a little bit of hydroponics for animal feed, but that's very, very internal. That's almost at a research stage. Anybody would like to take that? Dharamji, maybe?
Yes,
Do you see a lot of hydroponically grown vegetables and fruits that come into your stores now?
Yes, now it is coming. In fact, hydroponics is not new in India. For the past 4 or 5 years, it has been doing, but it has been really small. But now for the past 2 years, in fact, it is increasing. In Delhi, there is one suburb that is Dwarka. In Dwarka itself, there is a gentleman, approximately half acre of land is there. He has put tiers and he is doing and he is supplying to the modern retailers. Even some of the retail companies, they are doing hydroponically, they are selling hydroponically grown products in their shelves. And even the plants are in the small pots and they are live and one can buy for rupees 200 rupees and they can cut and harvest. So it is even the live hydroponics pots are being sold. So it is very much there in India already, but it is a small scale and primarily leafy products are done because it is easy to do. But on the very commercial scale, I think it is not viable right now. Since the capex involved is very high to set up.
Capital is high.
Yes, hydroponics, perfect. So close to cities only it can be done, and the cities which have higher purchasing power. Yeah.
Right. So I think there's a gentleman by the name of Shriram who runs India's largest coordinated hydroponics facility. He's outside of Bangalore, and markets like those are the ones that support an integrated chain of hydroponic products. We have a large captive audience of people who are able to buy that because the cost of production is high because of your initial capex. Who else is? Anybody else has a question? Question to Jyotishman. What do you think can persuade farmers to do 2 croppings a year?
Oh, well, I was typing it because since others were speaking. Yeah, I mean, it's just a awareness issue because dual cropping of paddy is not unheard of. And we have local varieties, Baodhan, which can be done in flooded areas. It is done in flooded areas. These are the kind of rice which will be lapped up by public everywhere. In fact, there are different varieties of glutinous rice available here, which is similar to Japanese varieties of paddy. Kumosaul. I mean, all you do is add water to it, right? So, and these are the special varieties that can be done, yes, with 2 types of cropping. And also, let me give a small equation. I know it for a fact because in an ancestral village, when we do paddy, we have 25 man of paddy per bigha growing, right? So 25 man is what? 40 kgs, that's 1000 kgs,
1000 kilos,
right? Per bighas. 1000. A small farmer might have in Assam 10 bighas, which is approximately 3 acres. So 1000 per bigha, you get what? 17 rupees, 17,000 rupees per bigha is your earning into 10 bighas, 1,70,000. And any farmer will tell you don't earn more than 50%, 70. I'm saying 30% you earn, but I'm saying on the higher side 50% you earn. So 85,000 is the income that a farmer gets. Now everybody look at your mobile phones, look at your watches, look at your shoes, look at your laptop that you're working on. I mean, that's the earning of a farmer in our state. No amount of government incentive and increasing the MSP will help till the time we encourage, because we have to be that vector of change, where we ensure that we get people to do at least 2 times cropping. And it is inexpensive. Solar pumps are available, irrigation facility. We can dig 6 feet and we get water. It's not a concern. We can do it. So it's doable. Mindset change is required, and it is we who are attending this meeting that we should be doing it.
Yeah, it's probably one of the reasons why so many youths end up going to Bangalore and Chennai and work in category A jobs. Right. And sometimes what we tell, we come from the very, very rustic livestock space. What you get from a land in a year, you get from a single pig. So sometimes 1 bigha is equal to 1 pig, and you can increase the number of pigs. It's more difficult to increase the number of bighas. Yeah. At least with 2 croppings, if you have 10 bighas, it's equal to 20 bighas in a year. So just by doubling his number of crops, it doubles his income. Vijay is there sitting very peacefully in Shillong.
Just listening to all the bright conversations.
All the ball panelists. You deal with multiple countries. You deal with some of the most modern economies in the world. But if we wanted to focus tomorrow on places like Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, which is much more accessible to many of the young entrepreneurs, the smaller companies, the ones who are just starting off, what would be your advice to them? I mean, not Germany, Singapore, but if you want to export to Bangladesh, Vietnam, Nepal, what do they need to do? What channels do they need to build? What strengths do they need to build?
I think to sell anywhere, the first thing you need to identify is who do you want to sell it to? When you build a product, you can build multiple things out of it. You can segment it into a high premium segment. You can do it a mid category. You can make it a mass. So depending upon that, I think, it depends on how you work your branding and all of that. So when you have to go to a country like Bangladesh, you look whether you want to target the 1% of Bangladesh or whether you want to target the 70% of Bangladesh. Accordingly, then you will have to bank into it. Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's better if just keep it grounded. Understand your markets before you venture out into them. Don't build a product and then look for a market. Identify the trend of the market or where you want to sell, understand, like for example, right now, we will have to anticipate in the next couple of months or the next 2 years or 3 years, how would consumers behave? What kind of food will they want to? Do they want to go to a restaurant or to a hotel, or rather would they want a home delivered? These are the kind of things. I mean, we're not saying predicting is too strong a word, but we need to anticipate. So I think as an entrepreneur, we must keep ourselves at the shoes of the consumer, understand that part before we reach out to them.
Well said. Anything else anybody would like to add? We are at a convenient time of 4:20, 420, so I think we can call it a day.
Yes, we can call it a day. But this session, I think, is so interesting. So many beautiful thoughts are coming, and those are not only thoughts; they are really workable action ideas, and these can be worked upon. So, if this session could have been longer, it would have been much better. But time abhi 420 ho gaya hai.
I think, Arindam, thank you so much. Thank you all the panelists for being with us. And what I can gather at the end is that we have markets, there are resources. It's a question of strategizing as to how we look ahead. Yes. And we look at the current problems and opportunities, and particularly in terms of all the migrants coming back. I think we look at them as a lot of value addition that which has happened to them because of the exposure. And we take advantage of the value of the exposure that they've got. And I personally feel like 60% of them would not be going back with the experience. So how we strategize, how we use them, and how entrepreneurs can give them and we have more role models like the ones we have here from the region. Really look forward, and I'm sure the people who are here have largely benefited from this interaction. And I now really wish that the session was so engaging, we could have extended it even beyond our time. But nevertheless, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Arindam. I'd just like to do a last 1 minute roundup. Thanks everyone, the entire panelists, for giving us a wonderful exposure. Raj, of course, just a little digression. I remember when Raj started, and I was, I think, one of the first ones to start taste his tea at that time. And I was finding it very interesting through an online thing. We started. So I think that's something wonderful. Some
I know
five
Dr.
years back.
Sharma, yes.
5 years back or 6 years back. Yes. And so that was something very, very new. And
Yes,
all
we've
those
been,
are
we've
very,
been
very-
at it, and ever since selling specialty, we are selling even commodity teas to China now. So you just learn to evolve out of one experiment. That's how life is, I guess.
and all those accessories you sold together with tea, that was wonderful. So, so anyway, so yeah, but this is just for the lessons for the new guys who are coming in. There has been these startups all throughout. Raj started it some time back. I think every one of us has done that. So I think it was wonderful to listen to all of you. I hope the people here who's been listening to them has drawn some lessons. After all, food is something we all need to do. We know now that post-COVID, you don't need, I don't know whether you need an Apple MacBook and all that, but you definitely need food. So food is something that you need, and that's what you have to survive. And I think that's something we all need to gear towards. Northeast definitely has an ample scope. My feeling is there is a lot of opportunities in the problems that was taken out. And I'm sure, I think if the entrepreneurs can pick up some of these problems, like I think Vijay suggested, take one at a time and focus on that. I'm sure we are going to create value and also drive the economy. And thanks everyone for being here with us. We hope to be connected with all of you. I'm sure if any of these entrepreneurs like to meet or talk to any of these that, you can always get back to us. We'll connect you with these guys specifically if you want to have one-to-one. So thanks again for everyone for a wonderful session that we had. We would have loved to take it forward a little bit more, but I think 6 o'clock is a curfew time, and I'm sure people would like to run back home for people who are outside of your home. So yes, thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Unless there are at least a couple of panelists were meetings with ministers
I know.
who postponed that so that they could be with us today. So specific thank you to those people also, and everybody else for joining us.
And thank you, Arindam, for keeping it very lively. I know you did a wonderful job. So I think thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arindam. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
Namaskar.
you.
Thanks to Arindam to take it lively. Yeah, very nice.
And thank you. Thank you, Vajay sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.